It's good to be back. I come to Malaysia as often as I can, and I used to come out quite a lot. 10 years ago or so, I started working with Lemon Sky and with Passion Republic, and that was back when Lemon Sky was called Igloo, and we're 20 guys in a small room. And so I always enjoy coming out here. I'm going to stay more or less by the podium this time round, because this, although my background's in art, but this presentation has a lot of numbers in it, and numbers I can't remember. So I'm going to put them here, and don't worry too much about the numbers, just let them wash over you. We're painting a general picture of where things are going. So part of what I do at Microsoft is I help find and support all the external partners we work with, and AAA games use a lot of external partners. On average, 70% of all content that you create inside a AAA game, like Gears or Forza, is created outside of the studio. And we partner with several studios in Malaysia to create that kind of content. And so part of my job is to look forward. And it's one of the things we like to do at Microsoft. We like to look very far forward and see what's happening, and have a look at the signs and see if we can help. So this is what this presentation's about. We're looking at what's going to happen next. And I've seen a few trends, and I want to try and put them into context and give you an idea of the opportunities it might give you, and some of the threats it might give some of our organizations as well. So the way I'm phrasing this is that we have player one. And for us, player one is the games industry. That's us. And we're all lucky enough to work in the games industry, whether we are a publisher, a passionate indie, an aspiring student, or an external supplier. And external suppliers, like I mentioned, that's the world where I live. So let's take a look at why people, or the suppliers in this room, need to work together to create the games that we make. So I first did this investigation 2017, the first time I presented it, and I've updated it for here, but this is our industry. We're predicted to be, end of next year, 118 billion, which is significant, and I think you've seen this, some of you may have seen this slide before. Now, if we look at it, we're looking at economic growth, we're looking at our growth of around about 6.5%. The world is growing at 3%, so games are growing faster than the rest of the world's economy, like twice as fast. What's interesting is that I compare that to what the figures are now, the actuals, and 2018, it was 137 billion. So it was predicted to be 118, and it ended up being 137. We're growing faster than we predicted, way faster than we predicted. So this industry really is exploding at the moment. So the domestic markets, part of that, domestic markets in Southeast Asia, especially China, have really gone nuts. We're looking at South America and India are also starting to pick up. With a bit of stability, they will really pick up, they'll really explode. And on a fundamental level, it's these numbers is why we work with external teams. And we engage with our external suppliers because games are and have more content, there's more platforms, backwards compatibility and HD remasters mean more ports, games as a service is growing domestic markets, culturalization of games, and games experiences are far richer and far deeper than they've ever been before. And the only way you can generate that kind of content is to use people from all around the world, use artists and animators from all around the world to create it. So that's why scalability is the number one reason we employ external partners. So what's also quite interesting is that cost isn't the reason we do it. We don't go out and use people outside of our studios because they're cheaper. We use them because they're good and they can deliver and they can expand our resources. In fact, cost has dropped by 8% as a reason for why people will use outsourcers, why people use external partners. So what we actually have is, if you look, the lack of available resources has also fallen, and I think that's because people are now factoring outsourcing into their plans. But if we're having to scale to this kind of size, there is something else that's coming along that I think everybody's noticed, and that's VR and AR, which is everywhere. Now, I went to SIGGRAPH a couple of years ago, and I like to go to SIGGRAPH just to kind of soak it in, because SIGGRAPH is incredibly technical and it's completely fascinating, and quite a lot of it goes straight over my head. but you get a real impression of where things are going because there's so many geniuses in the room at the same time. And I would say 40% of what I saw was AR or VR related rather than games or film. So, but the interesting thing is, we're not making much money off it. Like VR and AR is everywhere, but we're not making an awful lot of money. The top Steam games only earned around 4 million, and most of those were actually released in 2016. That's rollover. The highest one was PlayStation VR Fallout 4, which earned 4.7. So really, we're not kind of making the numbers that the investment and where you see it, the fact you see VR everywhere would kind of indicate. And actually, AR, or mixed reality, is the clear winner. And there's kind of one reason why VR or AR at the moment is a clear winner. This guy. So Pokemon has generated far and away the most amount of money of any AR game. Now remember when it exploded onto the scene, and it generated 300 million within its first year. That's now moving into the billions. And even though it has gone, it's not as obvious as it was, it's not as everywhere as it was, it's still generating quite a lot of money. And Pikachu knows how to party, as you can see. So there's a bit of a skew, but AR and VR aren't earning the kind of money we'd expect them to do. So the combined market, including hardware, is estimated to be worth between 94 and 120 billion by 2021. Some have it as high as 215 billion, which at the time struck me as wildly optimistic, but 120 billion may also be on the high side. If you think back to those previous numbers, 120 billion is how big the games industry was last year. They're predicting it goes from nothing to the same size of the games industry inside 5 years. And that's a scale that took us 30 years to achieve. And the one who's predicted to be the eventual winner is not VR, it's AR. And by quite some margin as well. However, like I say, I live in the world of external providers, and we're a little bit more frosty about it, to be perfectly honest. If you look at those numbers, we're saying here, VR and AR is seen as the #1 driver for increased demand by 37%, but developers, only 10% of it see it driving their revenue, see them making money off it. And it's quite interesting when you think that if they only earned 300 million in that first year, you can see why the devs are kind of right. It's not ready yet. They don't see it. So why the difference? That's a big difference between 10% and 37%. Why the big difference? What are service providers seeing? What are the people who make the art, the animation, who do the UI and the concepting? What are they seeing that the developers aren't? What's going to be their biggest driver of growth? So, enter player 2. Enterprise. So this is the disruption. So what enterprise is, it's marketing, training, manufacturing, maintenance, education, architecture, and the rest. And when I say the rest, you're looking at VR news reporting, car configurators, medical tools and diagnosis. The medical VR market and AR market in America is already worth $1 billion. There's no real upper limit to what you can do with AR and VR in the enterprise market. It's basically everything. It's the entire rest of the industries that there are out there. And I think this explains why there's such a big gap between the service providers and the devs. The service providers are more confident because they're probably seeing work coming in from these service sectors. They're seeing inquiries coming in for their services from enterprise, from outside of games. They're starting to trickle in. So if we consider this market raised around 400 million total revenue in games and enterprise, off an install base of only 10 million a couple of years ago, that same market has over 700 marketing companies pushing VR and AR. That's not a very big market to have 700 marketing companies fighting over it. So it's either very saturated or they're betting on it and they're trying to get in early. And in order to deliver the product for them, they're reaching out to our external devs. So let's take a look at the future. Before going, like I say, before going forward, it's worth noting again that 400 million came from a standing start. By 2020, software sales are estimated to hit 14 billion, 10 billion of which will come from games. By 2025, software sales are predicted to increase to over 35 billion. Now, watch what happens here. The flip, it flips 180 degrees. Suddenly, enterprise is the majority share of money coming from VR and AR. And one of the fundamental reasons for that is a lot of the games are VR. And VR is about immersion. VR is about sinking yourself into the place. You're closing yourself off. And that's why we have arcades, because it's just not practical to do it in the home. I mean, my wife, if I sat on the couch and put on a VR headset and headphones, my wife would punch me in the side of the head before I'd got 2 minutes into a game. It's got limited use in that respect. But AR, the main driver behind augmented reality really is all about visualizing data. And that might sound quite dry, but visualizing data allows us to make good decisions and see things really. One interesting way of looking at it, I had somebody phrase it to me, was this was a government minister, and they were talking about their hospital and how the funding was not enough, and it was affecting the services. And what they did was they created a VR and AR simulator that allowed the government minister to walk into a hospital floor, and they said, if our funding stays here, this is what it'll look like. And it was crowded. And they said, if our funding continues to drop, this is what it'll look like. And there were patients sat on the floor. There was people rushing around all over the place. It looked crowded, and suddenly what is dry data, where somebody sees numbers, you're seeing people and interactivity. And so it's much more powerful. There's so much we can do with augmented reality outside of games. It's a huge, huge market. Also, let's look at the investment. So investment in VR software to date, 2.6 billion. Facebook paid over 3 billion for the Rift. HTC pledged to invest over 10 billion. Microsoft Magic Leap invested heavily in AR. So they're making some big bets. And quite interesting as well is to look at middleware. So as you know, Microsoft bought Simply Gone and Havoc. And I don't know how many people are aware of what those programs are, but I think for many artists, Simply Gone was a godsend. So optimizing models is boring. And Simply Gone made that an awful lot easier. Havoc created a lot of physics-based software and were real drivers behind a lot of the games. Now what's interesting is that's game software. That's game middleware. And Xbox didn't buy it. That's not the division that bought it. It was the devices division that bought it. So the people who saw the real value in that and drove acquiring those companies weren't in games, even though it was gaming tech. So why? It's worth bearing in mind that when it comes to VR and AR, this is where we are. We're at the large brick mobile phone stage of VR and AR. We're going to look back at our headsets and our sides, and we're going to look back at these huge things that we strapped onto our faces, and we're going to laugh. Your kids are going to find it hilarious that you ever wore something that big and that clunky, and you look that silly. It's going to be that big. They're looking at something of that kind of scale, and they're excited. So, on that thought, let's take a quick break and have a look at something pretty. It is lovely, isn't it? It really is. It's quite a beautiful piece of work. And the first time I saw that, it scared the crap out of me. I came back trembling. There were no guns, there were no monsters, no post-apocalyptic war zone. There was nothing in there. It was a game engine demo that wasn't aimed at gamers. And that's scary. So who was it aimed at? It was aimed at broadcast media. And here I mean anything that's story-based but non-interactive. And this is where we'll switch our attention to. And it's a fascinating area. So looking back at the Kite demo, we have a game engine trailer targeting film and TV. And it's over 3 years old. That's not all. Unreal has a sequencer, Crytek has Cinebox, Unity has CineSuite. In those intervening years, the major engines have all developed dedicated movie-making features into their toolsets. Delving deeper, there are a few more ways that real-time tech has entered broadcast media. There's VR production, and by this I mean using film and VR to shoot with virtual cameras, especially useful in full CGI or CGI-heavy productions. I made a couple of predictions at XDS Ignite back at during GDC 2017, and I had in mind that these were at least, optimistically, 2-3 years away. My first prediction was that previs will be the gateway to runtime assets in film. So previs at a high enough fidelity. So previs at a high enough fidelity allows directors to make crucial decisions easily and cheaply. So often when a CGI director gets to a point where they can make a judgment call, that CGI has got to around about 80% completion. And you can see it 80% complete, and then the director comes in and he says, hey, that looks great, but we need it at sunset. And you've only got 20% of your resources and 20% of your time left to go change the whole thing. With the game engine, you can just go, okay, I will just dial that over to sunset. Now how does it look? So if you look at the amount of time that saves, it's incredible. So I thought, if you use it as the entry point, as previs gets better and better and better, eventually you will see, it will bleed into, and you will start to see it inside games themselves, inside movies themselves. And this was a prediction I thought was way off, like, to get that kind of level of fidelity. I thought it was years away. And the next day at GDC, they announced it had already happened in Rogue One. So that robot in there is an Unreal Engine rendered robot in a full CGI movie. The second area is, or my second prediction was long-form TV series, especially the stylized, more kid stuff. It suits the engines easier. And you can figure you look at the fidelity, you look at some of the kids' programs, there's no reason why that can't be rendered in engine. And again, I figure this one was 2 or 3 years away. Later on that year, Zafari was announced. DreamWorks 20-episode series, the entire thing done in engine, done in Unreal. Apparently, it's around about 75% cheaper to make in Unreal. So things are moving very fast, which leads us to CGI and VFX industry and film. So China's box office has officially entered the golden age. So that means by 2010, it's expected to surpass US box office. It's going to be bigger than Hollywood. However, their VFX industry is not yet ready to deliver on the quality and the scale. That'll change, it'll take time, but until then, they'll start using many of the teams that we see out here in Malaysia and in Southeast Asia and in the West, because we have a deeper understanding and a better level of expertise. The other one, India. I've spent a lot of time in India, and their movie industry, as I think we all know, is crazy. And funnily enough, they don't make that many big budget films. They're just starting to get an appetite for big budget films, and even then, they're around the 8 to 10 million mark, which is borderline indie if you look at the US market. The average budget for a US Hollywood film is 65 million. So they're a long way away, but the sheer scale is incredible. And also, I don't know if you've seen any Bollywood films, what they'll do with CGI will just be insane. They will do some crazy, crazy stuff in their films. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. But again, these films are now making money in a huge market, and they are going to be CGI heavy. We've been shown that this now works. So let's put these markets into a bit of context. So by 2020, global box office predicted to be around 50 billion. TV revenue hits 274 billion. So combined, that's a 324 billion market. Games, as we know, is at 137 billion. So we stack these two next to each other, and you look at the potential impact that everything outside of games and movies can have on games if they're starting to use our tech, what we're good at. That's where the disruption is coming from. So, to summarize, player 2 has enterprise, broadcast media, box office, and enterprise doesn't have an upper limit to what it can do. I don't know how many people here will get that reference. So I'm going to say there's one more thing. So I got a couple of predictions right, and I went ahead and made a couple more because I got overconfident. So what's going to happen in the future is we have, and we're seeing it now, is subscription. We're moving to a subscription-based model of gaming. We are used to consuming content via subscription. When we look at Netflix, even when we look at cinema, certainly in the UK, you can pay $15 and get to see any movie you want as many times as you want in the course of a month, or you can pay $15 to see one movie once. We're moving to that subscription. And if you're going to drive subscription, if you're going to drive those models, you need content. And content's everything. So as we make this transition, hardware will become less and less of a factor. And in time, it'll become the equivalent of choosing whether or not to watch it on a HD or a 4K TV, or splashing out on IMAX. We already see an increase in the frequency of console cycles, and they're getting to be more akin to mobile phone updates. Backwards compatibility will fade into an acceptance that you can play anything, anywhere. It's just going to be a given. The vital exception is going to be exclusive content, and that affects us, because the one thing that we know is that content is king. Looking way back, content is Ming, for those of you old enough. And I think a good example of this is AMC. AMC is a US cable channel dedicated to movie repeats. Now, I know if you know AMC now, you might think of it differently, but actually when it started, all it did was it showed classic movies, and it just showed repeats of them. And what they did was they invested in a bunch of top talent and engineered a massive shift to original content. And their first thing they created was Mad Men. And then that was followed by Breaking Bad. They developed Mad Men in 2009. By 2016, they had more than doubled their profits, from 663 million to 1.4 billion. And you know what? $500 million, 600 million plus for doing nothing but showing repeats is pretty good revenue. I mean, that's easy money, right? But they could double it by getting the right content and the right teams together. It can change everything. A side effect as well is that brand isn't as important as you think it is. AMC stands for American Movie Classics, but that's no longer what you associate AMC with. Netflix was a DVD postal service. Your brand is only as strong as your content. In fact, content is so strong it can change your brand. So PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is like an investment and an economic kind of accountancy firm, made this observation in their report. To maintain the advantage, studios must aggressively invest in intellectual property development and production to build deeper rosters of branded, repeatable content aimed at multiple revenue streams. So, breaking that down simply, everybody in this room, one way or another, makes content. If video games follow the same streaming subscription-based model, then I believe the growth of this sector is actually underestimated. So, to round up, enterprise, broadcast media, box office, and subscription streaming-driven content services. Everything on this list employs game tech. And I know what you're thinking. If you're a service provider, ka-ching. This is just fantastic. Everything involves what you do. But as someone who deals with resources and finding resources, I feel a little bit more like this.
Vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us.
You see, they need what we have. They need artists and animators, engineers, 2D, UI, UX, audio, production, tests, localization, many, many more. And it's a world they're only just starting to explore. It's been our home for 30 years. So let's have a look. We know hiring can be hard. A lot of places face resource problems. Solutions such as incubators within service providers point to innovative solutions. We also have churn and attrition. We have people moving, jumping between studios, and obviously, changing their roles and growing. And it's interesting. Government support. When first investigated government support, what they actually found was they weren't looking for ways to studios to offer lower competitive rates. The studios came back to them and said, "No, what we want is money and education, because we can't find the people. It's not about finding the work. We can't find the people." And as we know, game development is all about people. That whole office full of computers really isn't worth a damn thing. It's the people. So here's a question. How are you? So this is from a survey from the IGDA in 2016. And if you look at it, I wouldn't call us scared of commitment, but there's a few issues we need to work through. Over half the workforce aren't expecting to still be with you inside 5 years. Another 70% aren't sure. And how many of those in the "I will be there indefinitely" category are founders and CEOs? How often do you get a viable candidate? So this is how hard is it to find good candidates. And I think anybody in this room who's been out looking, anybody in recruitment, can see that these ones, senior creative, senior technicals, they are gold dust. They're really hard to find. And I don't think it's going to surprise anybody. Mid-level isn't fantastic. That's not easy either. So next I'm going to switch over to suppliers. So there's not much in the way of research for suppliers. So I did some quick and dirty research myself. What I did was I looked at data, and this data was spread across North America, Europe, China, India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And I looked at things like employment ratement sites like Glassdoor. And this is what I found. On the plus side, the quality of projects is a big draw. And this lines up with the feedback from suppliers section at the External Development Summit, which listed quality projects as the main driver behind which suppliers they choose to work with. And that's an interesting thing to say as well. They're not looking at, suppliers aren't looking, animation and art companies aren't looking just to get hold of anybody. They're choosing the projects because that's how much work there is out there. And their own workers are saying, "We want to work on cool stuff, so you better go find us some cool stuff." Office environment high is being high up there as well, saying, "Hey, our office environment's pretty good," is an indicator that suppliers are recognizing that where people work's got to be good. And they're trying to keep staff by making sure that where they work is good. And we also enjoy working with the people next to us, which is a great sign. On the downside, and I'm going to cut management some slack in this because people go on Glassdoor to bitch about their managers for the most part. So I'm going to take that as slightly over-egged and just say, you can see that with overtime, stress, and holidays, around a third of all the bad feedback is around work-life balance. And it's in the news a lot at the moment, especially with Red Dead, about crunch and about working practices. And we can see that reflected across the industry here. The question I would have loved to ask suppliers is, how long do you expect to stay there? But there's none of those questions in Glassdoor, unfortunately. The other strong indicators are that every major service provider is growing, less and less relying solely on external hires, and they're setting up incubators, they're setting up their own training facilities to bring their own people through. And much like devs, their senior talent in vendors, so all the art and animation companies out here in Southeast Asia, they're the hardest ones to source. So returning to developers for a moment, you're a pretty happy lot. Job satisfaction over 65%, which is not bad. Statistically, you're 33 and child-free. You can see evidence of this in the stats. The top 5 answers are all areas I feel the new recruit would care about most learning new skills, salary, location, freedom. But there's another area I'd like to focus on, which is nearer the bottom. What do you think these 4 priorities describe? Amount of crunch expected, a family-friendly environment, flexibility, mobility, insurance and retirement benefits. Who cares about that? Your seniors care about that. The ones with families, the ones who've been there a long time. They've kind of moved from the learning new skills perhaps, they've moved maybe from the salary and location. They care about the long-term stability. And what's worrying is that those things there are exactly what a non-game company can offer. That's what BMW and Siemens and all the rest, that's what those kind of companies can offer. So you have the same resource problem with suppliers that you have out here, and your seniors, the people who are hardest to recruit, are the biggest, easiest target for the enterprise and broadcast media. And you are a very tempting alternative. When I was out, there's an event out in Berlin called Covadis. It's quite a small industry event. But what was interesting was that Audi were recruiting there. Framestore were recruiting at GDC, MPC were advertising for real-time devs, and General Electric were recruiting at SIGGRAPH. It's an odd mix of people who are now after us. So, I know what you're thinking, as gamers, developers, and suppliers, how do we combat a horrible new world of content, work, opportunity, and resources? So, we do have some power-ups. We do cool stuff. And we're good at it. As is a developed market, it's full of variety, there's new players who haven't figured out how it works yet, and that inexperience pays to our favor. Photogrammetry, as we perfect the cleanup pipeline, we'll cover increasingly large areas and amounts of realistic content, so we can ease off on the resources a little bit. And it also provides a nice jump-off point for stylized work. Procedural development of kits rather than making each unique part over and over again. AI and machine learning, we're making the process simpler and faster. And also, and we'll see some partners, especially in external development, really going at the AI and middleware route. CAD to Unreal real-time is an example, actually. And middleware innovation and better education and infrastructure. The percentage take it from universities is increasing. However, game dev graduates won't just be chasing, you won't be leaving your game dev course and going, right, which developer do I go to? You'll also go, I don't know. Pixar looks pretty good. DreamWorks looks quite nice. I wonder what's happening at Pinewood Studios. They're doing nice stuff. It's going to be a big draw. So, embrace and prepare. This is my strategy for how we deal with this. So, developers, video games are awesome. It's a vocation and it's a passion. We will always attract talent. We will always be at the boundary edge, and that's an exciting place to be. And one of the things that I have noticed from coders who have made the switch from games to enterprise is that when they've landed at the enterprise, when they land in their new company, after a couple of months they've come back and said, you know what, I'm a rock star here. I've been doing simple stuff since I got here, and they consider me to be a freaking rock star. Because we're on the boundary edge. We're on the very cutting edge of what's happening. Game coders at the top end, especially AAA, they are the top end of coders. Because making games is really hard. So we'll always be at the boundary edge, and it's an exciting place to be. It's just that we'll no longer be there alone. And the battleground will be in your studio, because it's all about people. We may struggle to compete on compensation, on salary, but that doesn't mean we can't compete on work-life balance, on environment, on stability and opportunity. And to be fair, we have seen some strides made in those areas. But I'd like to see us make sure that extends out across the industry. As a developer, we look inward. And I want to see how, as developers, we can support our external suppliers to make sure they're not going through the same problems and they're seeing that level of stability. Because we can be the cause of and the solution to both of those problems. Processes can be continually improved upon. We can get better at what we do. So for suppliers, and that's a fair few people in this room, you're awesome too. You get to work on cool stuff. the use of incubation and junior teams on VR and AR, this is kind of, so from my own kind of anecdotal evidence, when I've spoken to VR companies, there's still quite a lot of naivety. There's a lot of inexperience. I had one company say to us, when are we going to have Unreal Engine on HoloLens so that we can really push the visuals? And that's flickering. The fact of the matter is that we couldn't get the most out of Unity on HoloLens. It's not powerful enough yet. They don't need better tech, they need better artists. And I don't think they quite understand that yet. So if you think about it, all the things that make you a better artist in VR and AR, good optimization, knowing the value of a pixel, knowing the value of a vertex, of a poly, they're great things to instill in juniors. And VR use that type of, VR and AR use that kind of artwork. So if you have an enterprise client, not a bad idea to put your juniors on that work, because it instills good habits. And they're your cheapest resource. So you get the highest paying client using the cheapest resource while helping to train your junior animators. It's a bit of a win-win. So commercial VR and AR is still the Wild West. It really is. Some of the sales this year have gone down quite a bit, but the market is predicted to be bigger than it was before. People are still finding their own way. The big players aren't really there yet. It's the Wild West. And so protect yourself. Make sure that if you are going to get into enterprise, if that is something you're going to do, if you're going to go down those routes, isolate those sections within your company. Make sure they're protected. Don't go all in. And make sure if that fails, all it does is that it just affects one unit of your company, not the whole company. It's very tempting when it's Wild West to go all in because the rewards are so much bigger. If you do decide to go for it, pick your moment. For some companies, it might be too soon, too risky. For other companies, they might like the idea of getting in early. It'll depend on your own studio and its own culture. So I have a request. Enterprise will demand more inclusive and intuitive UI UX interactions. Broadcast media doesn't care so much about frames per second in real time. And I'd like to see us use that to explore and R&D what we can do in games. So if you don't care about frame rate quite so much, you can really push the boat out. You can really do something spectacular. If you can then learn how to optimize it and bring it back into games, then we can really use enterprise and broadcast media to up our game, to up what we do. Get excited and be agile. One of these things is that I like things that I'm pretty sure are going to happen. And enterprise and VR and broadcast media and this, it's going to happen. It's a thing that's going to happen. So don't fight against it. Don't worry about it taking your resources. Instead, look, how can we work together? How can we use it to our advantage? Be excited about it. I know. I know it's bad, and I know they've done a lot of crunch, but I'm really looking forward to getting back and sticking that bad boy on when I get home. So finally, we've slipped the lid off the Pandora's box we've been sitting on. The secret's out. Games are cool, and our tech is amazing. And while the space is the Wild West for now, we have a new vista of opportunities opening up. But then there are also a whole host of challenges. Admittedly, I've made some ominous-sounding warnings about resources that may have made a few people nervous. However, I'd like to think you're quite excited. It's our time now to go out and forge deeper partnerships with the outside world, looking at enterprise and broadcast, and use that to drive innovation and creativity within our own industry. Those investors who are betting so big that we're about to see the emergence of the next internet, they know that to realize that vision, it won't be created using Java and HTML. It'll be driven by game tech. It's the world of external development that can drive this. They can enable the small startup and the unwieldy monolith to bring together the skills and expertise needed to grasp the opportunities. I believe we're about to see the democratization to the outside world of all the tools, the techniques, the processes, and the artistry that we have so passionately and painfully created over the last 30 years. And it's going to be transformative. John Riticello, the CEO of Unity, said, "My sense is we're going to see growth and application adoption of VR in full flower by 2019. And we're going to see the beginnings of that by 2018. That doesn't give us much time. I'd like to see us spend it wisely." Thank you.
We We do have some time for questions, as I do believe you ended early. So let's
I whip through. I want to say I'm quick.
let's open things up for some questioning. Anyone in the audience has a question after listening to Sam's presentation? Please put your hands up. We'll get a microphone to you. Hand up, not hand this way.
It's okay if you don't have any questions.
Come on, guys.
No, it's all right. Cool.
Well, I'll have one for you.
Okay.
We have a Minister of Youth and Sports who's focused on esports and says that this is the future. What do you think?
Well, it's again, we're at the beginning. We're only starting now to learn how big it's going to be. And the fact that more people watch people play video games than play video games is a bit of an odd statistic. So yeah, esports is going to be huge. But also, we don't know where things are going to come from. So I get worried if we focus too much on one particular area. I want to look at a broad spectrum because the next hits come out of nowhere. Fortnite was a tech demo, or kind of meant to be a tech demo, and it took over the world. So I'd like to see a broad spread as well. I wouldn't want to focus too much.
Any questions now, guys? Did any of that kind of jog? There you go. I knew some of you had a question. Please, hang on. Let's get a mic to you.
Hello. Oh, hi. I want to ask a question. Sorry. Because you say the commercial and the business side, the enterprise, they are looking for people to join them. But yet the people who study these kind of things, they are more like the minute they started, they decided they want to study this is going towards games, right?
Yeah.
So how do the enterprise people find people who want to come in and do like education stuff or like just something that doesn't do with games?
Partly, well, they've got a couple of big attractors to them. You can earn more money.
Yeah,
that's
sense.
one of the things.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, again, why we're looking at the charts, it was where they're really looking at is the seniors. So say if you start a new company, your first hires are seniors because you then need them to train down and then understand and set the culture and understand how you make things. So their first hires really are going to be seniors. And seniors have spent a lot of time in the game industry already, and quite often their priorities have shifted. I mean, people can be passionate about games their entire lives, but if you've spent 15 years working in crunch, if you've spent 15 years and you're tired and you've got a family and your priorities have shifted, you may look at it and go, you know what? I don't have to work crunch, and I can have a normal job. I can spend more time with the family, and it's 9 to 5, and they'll pay me more. That's a tempting proposition. So there will be some. The other side of that as well is that's enterprise, which is big enough, but broadcast. When you are looking at DreamWorks and Pixar and stuff, that's still exciting IP. That's still exciting stuff. So that's got a more creative draw to it as well. So you may find they can draw in some of the younger people in as well. But yeah, you can just target the seniors, and we need our seniors.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Any other questions? We do have some more time.
Oh, good.
If there are no other questions, please join me in thanking Sam Carlisle for joining
Thank
us
you.
here today as our first speaker on day 2.
Thank you.